VocalEyes, who are currently live on the platform. One of the first offers to sit on the new platform with the new branding. So welcome. And I'm joined by Jerry, Peter and Susan today from VocalEyes, who are really going to tell us about the background to the organisation, what their plans are for the future and how you can help them achieve more impact. So hi guys, nice to have you here. So I'm going to hear from Peter shortly, but just before we start, I'll just give a bit of housekeeping. So we'll run the session for about 45 minutes and I'll be asking some questions of the panelists. You can also ask your own questions via the chat function, and I will feed those into the conversation as we go. Also, just to say, this isn't a financial promotion of any kind. This is just highlighting all the great work that VocalEyes is doing. And if you do require any further information, of course, there's lots of information on the website, but we can't give any specific advice with regards to your own financial circumstances. So if you need any more help, do contact a financial advisor. Anyway, let's get going. So just to repeat that for anyone who's just joining, we're joined today by Peter, Jerry and Susan from VocalEyes. So first of all, Peter, can you give us the overview of VocalEyes and how it came together?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks very much for inviting us here and obviously accepting us onto the FX platform. It's been a great experience. Obviously, we've only been up there 10 days so far and there's been a great response. So we're really, really pleased. Yeah, so my name's Peter Anderson. I'm the founder of VocalEyes. I live in Swansea, here in Wales, not so sunny today. So VocalEyes came out of another project, actually, with a similar name called Localize with an L. And people can look that up. It's localeyes.org. And I started that project back in 2003. That was really born out of an IT company that I was running around 2000. And I had a team of 10 there delivering all sorts of IT solutions, from Flash animation, which was where we sort of made our name, through to all sorts of different IT solutions, hardware and software. And at the time, lots of social enterprises were coming into the business asking how they could be supported, but they had no finance and they had no capacity. And so it occurred to me then that there was a really good project, or that communities needed empowering with software and with capacity to be able to actually use that software well. So I set up a project called Localize, which was the aim was to be a comprehensive community resource management system. The idea being, what can we map in our communities, and can we, let's see that, let's see all those layers. That might be skills, it might be carbon footprints, it might be happiness indexes, it might be buildings that are available. So when people want to get stuff done in communities, they can look in this resource and they can find the resources that they need to crack on and get stuff done. So I did that for around 5 years, and sort of culminated in an award ceremony with Gordon Brown, a Revolutionary Award, which I was awarded. I was also awarded the one to watch out of all of social innovation in the UK in 2008, which I thought, you know, was a high point. Obviously, they gave us a £10,000 check and sort of just told us to get on with it. But you can imagine this project is a big project. It's kind of an infrastructure project, really. And the issue being, you know, you can't do a lot with £10,000. At that time, we also realized that even if we build all of these tools for local engagement, people need a way to discover those tools themselves. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge amount of marketing required. We needed to tap into the intrinsic motivation of people in communities to get stuff done. And that's really, it's sort of combined with conferences that I was going to around the climate. This is around 2007, 2008. People like Satish Kumar, Jonathan Porritt, Vandana Shiva, these sorts of people. They were talking a lot about the climate issue, you know, for most of their conference. And then they would talk at the end about the solution, and the solution being grassroots democracy, really being the answer to local and global issues. grassroots democracy and community empowerment. So when I heard this sort of 5 or 6 times, I decided to look into who was actually trying to solve this problem. And there really wasn't many people, if any, there trying to actually create some sort of infrastructure at the local level. So if you look at what does grassroots democracy look like today, you find this sort of bizarre ward structure. There's 10,000 wards in the United Kingdom, 1,000 in Wales, 36 here in Swansea. And if you ask people, what connection do you have to grassroots democracy or your local ward? Most people are either completely disconnected, they don't know which ward they live in, they don't know who their councillors are, what money they've got to spend, this sort of thing, or why it's being spent on that. Or they've had a go at getting into the system and they've sort of had a really unhappy experience or frustrating experience. So this to me became the elephant in the room. If all these leading speakers are saying the answers are grassroots democracy, community empowerment, and yet residents are completely disconnected from that process, obviously there's a big void to fill here, and that's where VocalEyes came from. So VocalEyes is, the ambition is to lay down an infrastructure for grassroots democracy, but also for community organising, because grassroots democracy essentially is the ability to be able to talk to communities of any kind and understand what their priorities are. But if you only do that, you're just doing consultation and you're just going to be a talking shop. So we realised early on that we needed more tools to not just identify what the priorities are and give people a voice, but also to enable people to opt into working groups, for those working groups then to create action plans and then for them to crowdsource those projects into action. And as we've been on this journey, we've sort of understood how we can make that journey, that feedback loop more efficient, partly by initially creating templates, for instance, of solutions that already exist around the world, and enable people to discover those. So they're not starting from scratch, that we do a lot of the hard work in terms of researching things like, urban farming and tree planting and the energy projects, because most communities have very similar wants and needs around renewable energy and local food and this sort of health and well-being. So part of the job is creating this solutions repository. Then when you ask communities, as you say, you get similar priorities. So our sort of highest level ambition at the moment is to be able to link those working groups where there are common priorities across communities and try to enable coordinated collective action. So essentially you're going to see on Zoom, you're going to see working groups from across the country, potentially across the world, that all want to, let's say on a Monday, it's training around how to plant trees. On a Tuesday, it's training on how to do, let's say, renewable energy and this sort of thing. So going from case studies, like silo case studies that we see on TED or Facebook or YouTube that inspire us, where at the moment we can only really share those case studies into Facebook or social media, and we get likes and we get comments, but it doesn't actually make that happen. To be able to go to a higher level of organising, sharing those case studies into a community organising platform that is dedicated for that purpose, and where then all the residents or the members get a ping or a notification there's a new priority or idea on the system, the working group opts in, and then that working group is then supported to implement.
Yeah,
so that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Which, is why it's so good to have you on the platform, because actually that so aligns with, a lot of our own ethos and our own mission about democratizing finance, grassroots action, empowering communities to do great projects and great things, and then to replicate those across the country, so actually, we're doing slightly different things, but we're super aligned actually, which is really excellent.
You talk about replication, and this is all on a backdrop of a 6th mass extinction, unfortunately. VocalEyes is one of those products that will probably become successful the worse things get, because the more people actually value local democracy and the community organising. But yeah, it really comes down to that thing, not innovation, because innovation is happening already in the garages, in the bedrooms, in the universities. There are lots of places where innovation can flourish. What's challenging is how do you take that case study once that innovation comes to fruition in one or two places, and then scale that up in all the relevant communities. So that might be geographic communities, or it might be, you know, pupils in primary schools, or tenants in housing associations, or staff in local councils. They all need to do very similar things. And can we, as I say, move that up to a higher level of organisations where all those working groups are actually sharing their knowledge and learning from each other? So we're going to waves of coordinated action together.
So I think the impact is really clear there, and thank you for just bringing that, you know, full story to really give us some colour on how the organisation came to be, and you know, your scale of ambition is super strong, I can see. So let's bring in, can we talk to Jerry and bring Jerry in to talk about the business model and how that works, that supports this organisation and the potential growth?
Yeah, sure. Hello, folks. Yeah, my name is Jerry Wilkinson. I've been in technology a lot of my life, and the last 6 years or so has been in cloud-based technology around finance. And so the challenge when I looked at what Peter wanted to do and to find out and to look at how we could raise funds around this project was to get a decent business model in place. And so I took the view that what we wanted to do is to implement a business model which is quite common now, based around a cloud-based infrastructure, utilizing SaaS, software as a service, as the platform to offer this service out to communities. And so we offer it out on a SaaS basis. We have a pricing structure which is based around the particular organizations that we're servicing. We have 3 different tiers, starting as low as £2,000 per annum, moving up to £10,000 per annum. And within that package, we offer the software implementation and consultancy services. So that's our core offering. We've got some sunk costs already in the software, so there's a significant amount of profit within the software, less so in the consulting and the training side of things. In addition to that, we offer a bespoke consulting service and e-training and direct training to organizations in order to take up these offers. We're focusing on education, housing associations and councils, and we're seeing particular growth currently in big city projects. So we've got a big project going on in Nottingham, we've got one going on in Leeds, we've got in Swansea, and there is a groundswell of movement in this area, and we're basically pitching our software as a platform to assist those organizations. The way that we sell the software is probably again quite traditional in software terms. We have a direct sales team. We sell through affiliates, and we've really embraced this affiliate approach where anybody that introduces a lead to us, they have a code, they can log onto the platform. If that transaction goes through, then we pay them a commission. This is a not-for-profit organization, so the revenues that we earn, we're pushing back into improving the community support that we give. And so the channels, basically direct sales, affiliate sales, anybody that's got a code can help us in that process. Associates, where we're targeting specific organizations such as housing associations, and then probably value-added resellers in different countries. So we have quite an active movement going on in the States at present, and there's quite a lot of interest in that, and Peter can perhaps talk about that. So that's something about the business model.
Lovely. And from a sort of revenue generation point of view, you're already creating revenue.
Yes, we are. Yeah. Yes, I mean, we basically we've been. The reason why we came to the market to look for funding is because of the demand. you know, it's quite, in the last 12 months, we've seen significant amount of business coming through. And we realized that, you know, Peter's been toiling away at this project for many years. And now it seems to be the opportunity to really catapult this project and you know, really spread the word. And so the way that we want to do that, we want to use the funds both to improve our software infrastructure. So we're going to be ensuring that we've got good mobile capability, good infrastructure capability. We want to improve our marketing and get some direct sales. Although we're a not-for-profit community interest company, a CIC, we're very focused on getting revenues through the door in a, you know, quite a traditional, I suppose, software approach.
Okay, great. So bringing Susan in now, hopefully if your internet connection holds up. Obviously the communities are very much at the heart of this, and you're involved in that. Presumably your plan is to grow the number of communities that you're engaging with, and perhaps you could talk a little bit about that, and also give us a couple of really tangible case studies where you've seen delivery of a project from start to finish, and what the impact has been.
Sure, that's no problem at all. Hi, I'm Susan, and the beauty of the platform is that it gives all members of the community a voice, a real say in what changes they'd like to see in their community. And when I mention community, I'm not just talking about communities of place. So we all think of communities as the place where we live, but also you have communities of interest. And so the beauty of the platform is that it allows communities of interest and communities of place and residents within both of those to have a say in what they'd like and what changes they'd like to see. So the platform is set up on electoral ward basis. So when you register, you drop into your electoral ward and you'll be able to see what's going on there at that time. If you are in an organisation and you'd like to set up your own group, then that's also possible, and you can have that closed door open to the community of place as well. So the way that it works is that it's anonymous. So when you engage with the platform, you can rate ideas, you can add ideas, nobody knows who's put that in. And so it actually takes partisan politics out of democracy. And so it's really engaging people on the ground. Through the platform, you can form networks with people who are like-minded. You can get engaged in the same sort of projects. If an idea is really popular, you can actually pledge to get involved and form a group and go off and do it on your own. Or it may be that the local community council, the local county council, or another organisation may have actually made some funding available, and that is also possible to show that on the platform. And what you have then is participatory budgeting. So you wanted a couple of examples. So there's a small community in Swansea, in Gower, Pennard. They are the first town and community council in Wales to do participatory budgeting with a proportion of the precept. And so they actually are just about to head into their 4th year using the platform for that purpose. And what they've done is they've put £5,000 of the precept onto the platform for residents in the community to have a say on what they would like that money to be spent on. And that's had some really great results. So a lot of the, well, actually, no, all of the ideas that came through and were funded that way weren't even on the radar of the community council at all. So they are from proper grassroots ideas, and they range from small things. So people wanted more litter picks, and the community council felt that they didn't have the capacity to keep organising and running litter picks alongside everything else. So they bought litter pickers in hoops that are stored at the local pubs, and the community can sign those out and take them and on their walks with them and then sign them back in again. So that it's actually given the community control over that as well. Then they worked with a local business. So they've used the water supply, put in a separate meter from a local business, and that's to put in a drinking fountain outside that business, and that business then has also taken all the plastic bottles out of their fridge. And so if you want a bottle of water, then you can refill at the water fountain outside. So as well as benefiting the community, obviously we have the environmental impact there. And then we're looking at bigger projects. So somebody put in a community hub, which obviously is not something that's going to be paid for with £5,000. So the Community Council got a bit creative and used some of that funding as match funding for a grant to carry out a feasibility study to make sure that this thing was possible, and they've had the results of that now, and they're moving on to the next stage. So even the big ideas can still move forward through the platform from nowhere at all. And as a result of all the environmental ideas that actually went on in that community, the Town and Community Council declared a climate and ecological emergency, and then worked with the community to produce a plan in 6 months, an annual plan to try and move towards a carbon neutral future for the community. And these things, all these ideas are then replicable across communities as well. And recently we worked with a large housing association in England, and they carried out a participatory budgeting project using the platform, and they've just allocated £40,000 to 10 different projects in Bristol and Abingdon. So it's got a wealth of tools available.
That's really helpful to think about how it will be used and is being used in practice. And we're getting some questions coming in, so I'm going to start firing those at you. Before we get onto that, just thinking about, you know, the plan and the scaling of the organisation, you've obviously chosen to use a bond, which is both SITR eligible and eligible under the IFISA, which I'll come back to those acronyms in a second. But why specifically, Jerry or Peter, why did you choose to do a bond rather than equity?
Well, my background is really raising funds through equity for small to medium-sized companies. The challenge that I had with VocalEyes is that it was a CIC guaranteed by with no equity in it, and therefore, you know, the challenge is really hard to figure out how do you raise money when you haven't got equity to offer investors, and so it was only by looking at what SITR offered and what the HMRC required, because when you apply for SITR, there is a requirement to define what the debt instrument for the particular organisation, and so it was really driven by the structure of the company that made us look at the bond offer. But the interesting thing about the bond offer, from my perspective, where normally when you're raising finance for seed investment from angels in an equity environment, the forecasts are often quite exaggerated, one might say, in order to attract those investors. I think you've got to balance that when you're offering a bond, because clearly it's a fixed term, fixed maturity, and you have to pay back that bond, and you've got to pay interest on a yearly basis. So I think you have to have a higher level of integrity in your financial model to offer this type of service, and particularly if you're going to go out and offer this to the general public as well. And so it's offered some challenges, but in actual fact, it really does, I think, focus you on ensuring that you have a sustainable business to deliver the forecasts that you and they are only forecasts, by the way, and we're not saying, you know, that they can go either way, and we know that, but you know, you have to think hard, I think, much harder than if you were raising finance from in a seed finance with equity, I would say.
Okay, so let's.
add just a couple of things to that as well that might resonate with people. Jerry touched on it in terms of integrity. You've got that issue with our mission in that we want to engage local communities, and in a very practical sense, if we were actually, you might see from the business plan that we were a commercial entity a few years back, limited by shares, and and looking to raise funds through equity, and we were actually offered a term sheet by the Welsh government there. But there's a couple of challenges. One is the voluntary sector cannot engage with you, being a commercial enterprise, so they can't actually advertise any volunteering opportunities. So that's obviously a real barrier. Councillors, and usually quite often it's the first question that people will ask is, what type of entity are you? And if you say you're a commercial company limited by shares, then immediately barriers are going up and doors are closing. Another aspect is many of you will have watched The Social Dilemma recently on Netflix, and it really does highlight the challenge that comes down the road when if and when you become successful, that you've got this juxtaposition between your mission and your shareholders. And you've seen all these directors of Facebook, Instagram, the social media companies apologizing because they didn't see this coming down the road. They just thought they were setting up an IT company, online social media company, but actually now what's happened is the whole entire power of artificial intelligence is now there, sucking us into a user experience that is not for people's benefit. Whereas you can imagine if we were able to harness the power of artificial intelligence that combines the case studies of projects that have already happened throughout the world with communities and the capacity of communities, and to support that, it would be almost the opposite of what the social media platforms are doing at the moment.
Yeah, okay, really helpful. And we've mentioned a couple of acronyms. So we've talked about SITR, which is Social Investment Tax Relief. And we've talked about the IF ISA, which is the Innovative Finance ISA. And both of those offer some tax reliefs dependent on your own financial circumstances, of course. But you can read some more about that on the FX website. But effectively, SITR gives you some tax relief to compensate for the risk of investing in these types of organisations, and the IF ISA wrapper gives you the opportunity to earn the interest tax-free, obviously dependent on your financial circumstances. So you can read some more about that on the FX website, but I think it really does help to boost the investability of the offer, which is great. Obviously, we need to talk about risks a little bit as well, and I can pull in some of the questions that are coming in as well. So first of all, let's just say a question to Jerry. You'll have seen this one. Uneasy about sales commission. How do you monitor your franchisees to ensure that they're offering the end users the best solution for their needs?
Yeah, good question. Always a challenge. I think the predominant sales are coming direct, and where we have got a social franchisee operating and looking for opportunities for us, I think you always have that challenge. What we've done is that we've really understood the profitability of the opportunities, so we can allocate commissions accordingly. But it really is down to channel management and ensuring that you are educating your social franchisees in the offer that you've got available. I'm not sure whether that answers the question, but it's a challenge to compete in that environment, and in my experience, it's a matter of having a good channel management process, and educating the franchisees in the offer that you've got out there to ensure that they do make sure that you have got the message is coming over clear. We also get very much involved in all transactions at the end, where we're going in and there, there's a board meeting where they're making that decision. So it's the franchisees deliver the leads to us, and then we then follow that up, and we will pay a commission should that transaction go through.
Right. And I was going to say, I think it speaks to sort of having good governance for the organisation, doesn't it? And having a strong board and the right decision-making groups within the organisation.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Good. So another question. It sounds great. How is it differing from something like Action Network? Is that for you, Peter?
Yeah, I could try to answer that one. Yeah, I have used Action Network, actually. I do know of it. I think one of the questions to ask yourself when comparing to other platforms, because there are a lot of platforms out there and they all do different things. Most do just a segment of what's needed. So the first question to ask is, could this platform become an infrastructure for grassroots democracy and community organising? I think that's one of the questions. And with things like Action Network, that's not the case. So another thing is that they're not necessarily trying to link coordinated action across groups. It's generally, with all of these platforms, they all operate in silo. So as an organisation or a group, you take the tools and you use them for your own purpose. There's no real sort of commonality, and they're not trying to build the networks. As you can see, in terms of trying to build these repository of templates that will be common to various different communities across networks and enable coordinated collective action. It's just not the mission of most of these platforms.
Yeah, and I think that probably speaks to one of the other questions, when communities are short of money, what's your strategy to compete with free tools? I mean, I think you're just on a completely different level to the free tools in terms of the experience and the infrastructure and the interconnectivity between the groups and the different stakeholders as well.
Yeah, I mean, and there's only so much you can do with Google Docs. And Google Docs, it's not made for grassroots democracy and community organising. Of course, they have a certain level of capability, and if you've got skilled people in your teams, you will get to a certain point. But you're still, whatever the tools you've got, you're still faced with the really hard bit, which is applying those tools to the community. For that, you need dedicated engagement strategies, you need experience, you need ongoing support, you need those templates, you need a mobile app. It's complicated and it's a tough nut to crack, and anyone here that's ever tried to engage the members of their group will understand that, and it's one of the reasons why it's not there yet. So if you think about the millions of apps that you can download on your phone at the moment, and how important we see grassroots democracy and what a state democracy is in today, there's still not an app on your phone that you download for decision making in your local community or in your local authority.
Thank you. And a question which is quite close to my heart, actually, which we is a constant sort of push-pull for us as well, is how to engage communities in an affordable way, because their ability to pay can be quite limited. We see that ourselves with, the majority of our organisations that list being community benefit societies or such like. But obviously we need to exist as well. So how do you balance that demand and supply issue?
Yeah, well, right from the very beginning, the idea was to try to create a business model that would enable us to build enough capacity to support communities that don't have any finance or have very little finance, and they don't have a lot of capacity either. So one of the big aspects of this program is also to work with a training NEETs or other people in communities that want to learn new skills, and training them up, really bringing them up onto the crest of the wave, so to speak, of this digital movement, empowering them on how to use these new tools and enabling them to facilitate that within groups. So part of this it's sort of two-pronged in a sense. You've got the very sort of commercial aspects of like internal engagement within large housing associations, colleges, staff within businesses, this sort of thing. And then you've got the support for communities, which we see running regular training sessions on different levels of support and different levels of training for communities and social groups. And that's how we would provide that social mission and build up that social support.
And just to be really clear, question from someone who obviously is interested, as an individual who's a member of a local environmental group, to access the tools, would they need the parish council to get a license? So can they go directly, or do they go via the parish council?
Susan, do you want to talk on this?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the platform is available in communities. Once you register, you go into your community and you are able to add ideas. So if, as your local environmental group, you were happy to use it in that way, and you would do all of the engagement, and obviously any support from us then would be very minimal, then you can do that. But we would always encourage groups to approach their community councils. What we're looking at actually is setting up groups of community councils coming together and sharing the cost, so that we would do shared support then, and we'd have webinars that people could join from all over the country. It doesn't have to be everybody in Swansea, because we're not limited to being in a room any longer, is one of the things that COVID has accelerated quite incredibly. So there are lots of ways that you can use the platform without it costing you a fortune.
Yeah, lovely. So I think I've come to the end of the questions. So what have I not asked you that you're absolutely burning to tell us about before we close? Or have we covered everything?
I could just make a comment, I suppose. One is just the need for this. This is a complicated sort of problem to solve, in a sense, and that's why it hasn't been solved to date, and community organising is always challenging. But we desperately need a tool and service that provides this function. Again, I come back to the backdrop of the mass extinction event. You might have seen David Attenborough's recent comments, or you might have heard George Monbiot talking about the state of democracy, or these are big problems that need solving. And we encourage everybody here today to invest and to become not just an investor, but part of the journey. And everybody is linked to a community or a school. The job here is really democratizing all of our entities, whether they're geographic communities or interest groups or commercial organizations. And so everybody can get involved in one way or another. And we can't do it as a small team. We do need a broad membership and to be able to collaborate with people to make this happen. Lovely,
thank you. So for anyone who has any other further questions, then please do go to EthEx website and read more about VocalEyes. I hope you've enjoyed listening to their plans today, and how they'll be using the funding for scaling, which is obviously a highly impactful organisation. You can send us any questions if you want to afterwards, and we can direct them straight to the team. We will be having the offer live for another, Peter, can you remind me how long the offer's running for?
35 days, is it?
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Great. So you have got time to peruse the offer document. And just a quick couple of questions relating to EthEx. Yes, as you know, we have migrated systems in the last couple of weeks and done a brand refresh, and we're just in the process of doing part 2 of that, which is migrating all of the data from all of our offers since launch into the new system. And so everybody's portfolios will become live very shortly, and you'll be able to see all of the information you need within those. So do just bear with us while we do that. And thanks everyone for joining today. And thanks to the panelists, Jerry, Peter and Susan. Lovely to speak to you, and I certainly understand a lot more about the offer now, and I think it's incredibly interesting what you're doing, and I wish you all the best success, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future when you're going for the next raise and the next form of expansion. All right.
Great, thank you very much.
Thanks very much.